Hey everyone, Wandering Bard here. So I know that I finished my playthrough of Final Fantasy Type-0 a little while ago, but I've been wanting to make this video for a while where I evaluate the characters in Final Fantasy Type-0 from a usefulness standpoint as far as missions go. For anyone who's not familiar, Final Fantasy Type-0 is a spin-off title to the Fabula Nova Crystallis mythos, where you have a cast of 14 characters who are basically in a Fire Emblem Three Houses-esque school, except I guess this came first, and you go on missions in wartime. So you kind of do have to use the whole breadth of your roster on missions, and so every character, you have to be at least somewhat familiar with every character. So there is a case for some characters being universally better or worse than others, in my opinion. So today, I'm going to be making a tier list video where I discuss my opinions on how the characters fall as far as usefulness in this game. So, as far as how the tiers are going to go, S tier is going to be for basically one-man army type characters. A tier is going to be for amazing powerhouses. B tier is going to be for characters who have very niche usefulness and are decent but are not like spectacular. C tier is for player. Hold on, have I been saying Pokemon or characters? I made a Pokemon tier list video. Hold on, let me restart this. So just a quick rundown of how the tiers are going to go. S tier is going to be for characters who are basically one-man armies. A tier is going to be for characters who are pretty strong powerhouses, but not like one-man armies. B tier is going to be for characters who are useful in some situations, maybe, but not like super universally amazing. C tier is for characters who are kind of average or vanilla. D tier is for characters who I think are bad, and F tier is going to be for the stinkiest of the stinkers. I'm going to be going into detail on why I'm ranking each character the way they are, but of course this is going to be influenced by my experiences and opinions from playing the game. So if you all have a different one, please drop it in the comments. I only ask that you will be respectful as much as I'm trying to be respectful to all of you as I'm doing my tier list rankings. So starting off with Ace, I think Ace definitely goes into the S tier, and he is going to be the only character in this game who goes in S tier, in my opinion. Ace is basically a one-man army, and he's useful in a very interesting way because of the way he attacks. So Ace uses a set of cards to attack with, but his cards are very interesting in that they can pull a variety of different effects, such as HP and MP recovery, burst attacks, stop spells, etc. And the thing is that his cards are basically unlimited, and you can put abilities in his kit that will cut the deck in certain ways to prioritize different types of cards. So you can have a life hand, which will prioritize things like HP and MP recovery, or you can have an attack hand that prioritizes bursts or stop attacks. The reason why this matters, though, is because if you just give him the wall spell as a defensive spell, you can set up a wall, hide behind it, and just throw cards at people and throw spells at people. And because you have HP recovery on a stick without needing an item, and you have MP recovery on a stick also without needing items, you basically have infinite wall and infinite HP recovery if you play correctly. Just dodge a lot, attack a lot. And yeah, there's a reason why in Chapter 6, when I had to fight a whole bunch of mechs at once with only one unit, there's a reason why I chose Ace. Ace is an absolute monster. He's S tier, and I think he's going to be the only S tier in this game, because nobody else can really function in this game the way he does. Moving on to Deuce. Deuce is an interesting unit for me. So she attacks with a flute, where instead of being able to mash attack at enemies the way you do with most characters, with Deuce you just Z-target an enemy and then just hold the attack button as your attacks will slowly amble towards an opponent and hopefully hit them. It's far from my favorite style of attacking just because the attacks are not fast or reliable. The main useful thing about Deuce is that she can be an excellent support unit where her abilities can be used to bolster or heal her allies, and that's why I always loved having her in my team, like on the field, but I very rarely used her. I almost always left her to the AI to use. So I'll put her in C tier because I love having her, but I don't love personally using her. So I think she'd go in C tier. There's maybe a case for B for the support role, but definitely no higher than that. Trey is A tier for certain. My experience with Trey that really solidified this for me was the escape from Milites, when I took a lot of losses during that mission trying to escape from that spider robot, and it just came down to Trey and 8 against the giant spider mech, and 8 has like no range and no damage, and he couldn't really do anything. So I had to use Trey basically solo that fight, and I actually managed it. Trey soloed that battle for me. Trey can behave very similarly to Ace, where you just set up wall and rain down heavy fire on people. The bow attack is useful against enemies who love to hide or who you can't attack always, because you can just hold a stronger attack ready for when they do emerge. The thing with Trey that keeps him out of S tier is that he obviously doesn't have the infinite HP MP like Ace does, and also it's not super easy sometimes to snipe weak point strikes with him. In a very tense situation where you're dodging a lot, his attacks aren't as fast as some other characters are, so he's not always able to get the weak point strikes. But he's still a very good artillery unit. He's still reasonably fast, and I think that he is someone you could solo parts of missions with, as I already have demonstrated, if you need him to. So I think he definitely goes in A tier. Cater is interesting, and I'm gonna go ahead and rank 8 at the same time as Cater because I think that they behave in very similar ways. I'm gonna put 8 in C tier. Probably below Deuce, yeah. I think that 8 has a lot of potential with like the stances he can use, but I never really took the time to understand them, so I can't really speak for them personally. The thing with 8 for me is that he's a very vanilla unit. He moves very quickly, he strikes very quickly, but his attacks have like no range and kind of mad damage in my opinion. Cater is a step above him in a couple of ways because for one thing she has more versatility where she has the elementary attacks. And also she just has more range, and being able to fire off attacks very quickly at a range is incredibly useful. There are two battles in this game that I think are fundamentally unbalanced against the player, one of which is the Brianak fight when you're infiltrating the Magitech research facility, and the other one is the dark version of Gilgamesh that appears in the Chapel of Destruction at the very end of the game. And both of those battles are places where I think Cater really shines because you have to just snipe weak points as much as possible, and you have to be able to move and dodge very quickly. And against Gilgamesh, especially, you have to be able, actually, against both of them, you have to be able to snipe weak points at a range. So having a fast moving character like Cater who can snipe weak points at a range is helpful because, like, her attacks do basically no damage, but nobody's attacks do much damage in either of those battles unless you're hitting weak points. So that's where she really shines, but she's pretty meh apart from that. So no higher than B tier for me. Sync. Enough said. Sice will go in D tier. So full seriousness here, the reason why I put Sync in F tier is because her attacks have no range, they're so slow, and they have so much end lag. Also, I hated her as a character, so I avoided using her whenever I could. But the reason why Sice is in D tier is because I never really figured Sice out. Like, I feel like her Dark Nebula attack is really cool and interesting, but I could never really get it to work very well. Her Scythe is also really weird in some battles because, like, it's a very sweeping style of attack, which can be great against a wide swaths of enemies at once, or maybe against mechs, I suppose. The problem that I would have with Sice is that when I'm trying to attack single enemies sometimes, I would find that her attacks do better hitting all the space around the target than actually hitting the target. So, D tier Sice. 7 goes in B tier. I think, yeah, above Cater. 7 is just more universally helpful. Her whip blade is one of the few weapons that I ever really figured out where you can do the long range attacks, the grabbing attacks, or if you hold back as you hit the attack button, it swipes all the area around you. So that's really helpful. She just doesn't have a ton of power. So she's an incredibly useful unit. She's one of the few that I figured out, but I don't think she's an A tier powerhouse. 9 will go into C tier, I think. Probably above 8. Do I put him above Deuce? I always wanted to get more use out of 9 than I did. He hits really hard, the jump attacks are really nice, but I kept dying a lot whenever I used him, to be honest. He doesn't really have any range except with spells. And he's not a particular magical powerhouse either. It limits him. And honestly, yeah, like he has an ability that guards units, I suppose, but I never really found that super helpful either. So 9 will go into C tier. He's strong, he hits pretty hard, but I think that's all he's got to him, really. Jack will go in D tier, probably above Sice, I think. The thing with Jack is that like his katana attacks are very powerful. They could one-shot enemies if you have the right weapons. The problem is that he's so stinking slow. Like you have to be no, it's not even that he's slow. His movement style is so weird where you have to basically dodge constantly in order to do anything with him, and that's really frustrating for me, both just using him in the field and in battle. He's very strong, but he's so frustrating to use that I can't really put him higher than D tier. Queen is gonna go in B tier, probably between Seven and Cater. I think the thing is with Queen is that the most powerful thing she has, the most useful thing she has is the Divine Judgment attack, where she holds the katana above her head and it attacks in a giant corona of light around her. It heals her. I think it heals allies as well, and it damages enemies. It's great, but it leaves her incredibly vulnerable, and it's very easy to interrupt unless you can just kill enemies before they're able to do it. So super cool ability, but it has its drawbacks, and that's really the only thing she has for her. Still a good unit. She's pretty solid, but not higher than B tier. King goes in C tier, probably below 9 actually. King is just the worst version of Trey, where like he has the range, he has the same attack style of setting up a wall, but his attacks do like no damage, and he's super vulnerable when he's reloading. Like you get the ability that says that you can still attack with one gun while he reloads the other, so that's fine. But the problem is he can't dodge while he's reloading a gun, and I found several situations where I just got absolutely hosed by the fact that I couldn't get him out of the way in time. Like you think that common sense would dictate that he should prioritize not dying over reloading his gun, but I guess no one told the game developers that. So C tier. Rem is really weird to rank because I feel like in the right circumstances, she could technically be S tier because she can also give herself unlimited MP with her main alchemy ability, or I guess she has another ability that like steals MP from enemies when she hits them with it. I don't know exactly how that one goes. But with her main alchemy, if you charge up her ability gauge and just use it, it restores MP to herself and to her allies. The problem with using main alchemy is that there's obviously a cap on it. You have to actually fill the ability gauge, which means you have to rely on her daggers to get there. She's an amazing spellcaster, easily the most powerful magician, and she can just one-shot enemies, a lot of enemies with her strongest spells. But the strongest spells cost a lot of MP. You have to restore MP with main alchemy, which means you have to be able to use her daggers incredibly well as well. And her daggers are great. She's very fast. She can snipe kill weak points pretty well. But close combat's not good for her, especially with as frail as she is. Also, she's the most frail unit by far, and that limits her as well. So she'll go in A tier just because she can one-shot a bunch of enemies with spells and can restore MP pretty reliably without needing items. But I don't think that she's quite S tier, and just because of how frail she is, and there's limits to how much MP she can restore. Machina's ability is Machina is interesting. The problem with Machina is that you don't have him for all the missions due to story related stuff. But when you have him, he's helpful. His Cyclone Drive ability is so helpful because it can deal a ton of damage to a single target. It's especially useful against mechs because they're very slow. They can't dodge the Cyclone Drive, so just get behind them, use Cyclone Drive, and watch their health bars, all of them, go down at once. It's really stinking useful. He's a pretty solid unit apart from that as well. He's got reasonable attack speed, he's got the dual rapiers, good lightning magic as well. All around pretty great unit. I'd put him below Rem though. Definitely still an A tier because the Cyclone Drive is so good, but not lower than that. And that's it. This is my definitive ranking of all the Type-0 characters. So, Ace is the one S tier, Sync is the one F tier. There's not many bad units in this game. There's only like 3 units that are below C tier, which I think is really good for the fact that you have to use this breadth of characters on missions. And I do want to point out that every single character is good in some capacity. Like Sice has the sweeping attacks that are useful against maybe groups of enemies or mechs, but she's just not helpful overall in my opinion. I think the only character that I'd say is universally bad is against Sync because of how slow her and no range her attacks are. But even Sync can be useful, I suppose. Jack is just frustrating to move with, but his attacks are very strong and much faster than Sync's. Like even the D tier characters have their uses, so it's really about just finding the use for each character. There's just like these four characters who I think are universally more helpful that I think you should prioritize. But there are cases where only like Ace and Sync, for example, could do. Sorry, Ace and Cater could do really well against Dark Gilgamesh or against Brianak. So having them is very helpful. But you wouldn't use Cater too much apart from that. So finding the uses for each character and optimizing how you place your units in battle is really the trick with this game. So if anything, I want to highlight that part. That as much as I have these rankings for how the characters are, all of them are useful, except Sync in my opinion. So find the uses for each that work for you when playing this game, and you'll have a fun time. But that's all I got for today. Hope you guys did enjoy this video. I know it's come out pretty late after the Type-0 playthrough. The Type-0 playthrough came in. This site is so hard to work with that I don't know how many more of these tier lists I'm gonna make ultimately as well. But I hope that you find this meaningful, and I hope that you'll consider subbing to the channel if you want to see more of my content. I do like story-based and strategy-based video games, so if that's what you're into, come check me out, and check me out live on Twitch if you want to see my playthroughs in real time. Hope you guys have a good one.